On today's podcast, we're going to be covering how to be safer at work, so stay tuned. Welcome to Warehouse Safety Tips. You can find the show notes to each episode, links to information mentioned on the podcast, the social media platforms we're on, and anything else related to the podcast at warehousesafetytips.com. Now, if you're a seasoned podcast listener, this podcast is going to be different from most you listen to. It's based around exactly what the name implies, warehouse safety tips. And since the people in this industry are busy, we know that time is money and each episode will be as short and to the point as possible. And now, with all of that out of the way, let's get to the podcast. Before being in the profession I'm in now, I spent a great deal of time working in cubicles. Now, many of the positions I held doing so, the work I did was very repetitive. We had certain things that we had to do a certain way, and it continued minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, and so on. Now, at one point, I decided that I wanted to move up, and doing so required a lot of different things coming together to form a perfect storm. And much like getting a valedictorian honor in school, your quality and performance skills had to be among the best to even be considered. And this meant that I had to make every call a perfect one. And even though while looking back it seems impossible, it took me 18 straight months of perfection before I was able to move up. Now, although the acronym I created for this podcast isn't exactly the same, the methods I used to achieve those scores were. When translated over to a working in warehouse or facility where safety concerns are of the utmost importance, the steps I'll be covering will help you be better every day of your career. Before moving on, here's a word from one of our sponsors. If you've ever been to or worked in a warehouse, you know just how important safety is to both management and staff. It's almost impossible to go 10 steps without seeing safety tape, angles, signs, and or safety products. It's these items that show us how to be safe and avoid danger in the workplace. And if you're looking for the best products to make this happen, look no further than Mighty Line. Mighty Line floor signs and floor markings offer the best industrial products out there. We're proud to have Mighty Line as the official floor sign and floor marking company for the Warehouse Safety Tips podcast and site. Go to mightylinetape.com/safety tips to request a sample pack of their incredible safety signs and floor markings. Now back to the podcast. The definition of the adjective safer is free or secure from harm, injury, danger, or risk. Now, although following what I'm about to cover won't guarantee you're free or secure from harm, injury, danger, or risk, but when followed, it will greatly reduce your chances of those things happening to you or those around you. Now, using the adjective SAFER as an acronym, here are the steps that I come up with. First, survey. That's the S. Make sure you pay attention from the moment you arrive at work. Know what occurred on the shifts before you and what needs to be done to make your shift complete and anything else that requires your attention. The next is act. That's the A. Once you've surveyed what needs to be done, now it's time to put what you found into action. Next, it's follow. That's the F. The rules and guidelines of your facility are there for a reason. Follow them. Next, it's evaluate. That's the E. Things are never perfect, but when a plane takes off, there are thousands of adjustments that are made in between landing. While following your rules and guidelines, it's your job to improve upon them constantly. This might require eliminating something, tweaking something, and or creating something entirely new, but always improving. And lastly, it's repeat. That's the R. Lastly, doing the whole thing over day after day. The speaker and author Jeff Olson says, it doesn't seem to make a difference in the act of doing it, but compounded by time makes all the difference in the world. It being whatever you consistently do, good or bad. Part of the 6S methodology is sustain. This is putting everything you know into habit. In the first part of this podcast, I said that following these steps would help you be better every day of your career. It could also help you move up as I did, but at the very least, following these steps will help you make you and your fellow staff safer. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Warehouse Safety Tips. If you visit warehousesafetytips.com, you'll find the show notes for this episode and access to all of our blog posts, previous podcasts, advertiser information, and much more. Thank you for listening to Warehouse Safety Tips and have a safe day.